The whiskey tumbler hit the floor with a sharp crack, amber liquid spreading across the polished hardwood like spilled gold. Min-jae barely registered the sound. His focus was trained on the quarterly reports scattered across his desk. But then, through the doorway's reflection in the window glass, he saw her, the new housekeeper, the Nigerian woman with watchful eyes and a quiet strength that seemed to fill whatever space she occupied. She knelt to clean the mess in the corridor, reaching for a jagged glass shard, and that's when he saw it, the way her entire body went rigid for half a heartbeat, the subtle tightening of her jaw, the tremor she tried to hide as she forced herself to continue working. Most people would have missed it entirely. Most people wouldn't have given it a second thought. But Park Min-jae hadn't built his empire by overlooking details. At 37, he'd survived in a world where missing the smallest sign could mean the difference between breathing and being buried. Yet this flash of concealed agony on a stranger's face shouldn't have registered at all, shouldn't have made him abandon a conference call worth millions to trail her down that corridor, shouldn't have made him wonder what demons haunted her enough to force that kind of control into every gesture, or why she wore those long sleeves despite the July heat pressing against the windows. But it did. It absolutely did. Chidima Okafor had mastered invisibility over her 26 years. She drifted through Min-jae's sprawling Tribeca penthouse like morning mist, present but unnoticed, necessary but overlooked. It was precisely how she needed things, particularly now. The marble stretched beneath her attentive care, each surface briefly catching her deep brown reflection before she moved forward. Her natural curls were pulled into a severe bun, every strand carefully controlled. Professional, practical. The black uniform's long sleeves covered her completely despite the summer furnace outside, concealing what absolutely had to stay concealed.
Miss Okafor, Mr. Park requires the East Wing prepared before his 6 o'clock appointment. Mrs. Chen's voice carried her characteristic precision, though something kind flickered in her gaze. You're looking rather exhausted. Are you managing all right? I'm managing perfectly, Mrs. Chen. Thank you for your concern. The lie emerged smoothly. Chidinma had been lying about being perfectly fine for 4 weeks now, ever since Marcus had. She severed the thought immediately, concentrating instead on the cleaning supplies weighing down her arms. The pain radiating from her ribs was tolerable. She'd endured worse. At least this position paid enough to keep Chukwoody in his new school, to maintain their modest apartment in Washington Heights, to keep them far beyond Marcus's reach. Excellent. Mr. Park maintains very particular standards. Mrs. Chen's tone softened almost imperceptibly. However, should you require assistance with anything, I'm managing perfectly, Chidinma repeated, manufacturing a smile that never touched her eyes. She wasn't managing perfectly. The bruises hidden beneath her uniform pulsed with each breath, souvenirs from her ex-boyfriend's explosive rage when she'd finally gathered the courage to end things. But she was breathing, she was employed, and Chukwoody was secure with Ngozi while she scrubbed floors for people who inhabited an entirely different dimension of existence. The East Wing belonged exclusively to Park Min-jae. Chidinma had been employed at the residence for barely 3 weeks, encountering the owner perhaps 4 times total, each interaction lasting under a minute. He matched every whispered rumor circulating among the staff perfectly. Remote, formidable, and apparently involved in enterprises nobody discussed above a murmur. The man existed in shadows and commanded space like he'd purchased the rights to it, which, considering this penthouse's sheer magnitude, he probably had purchased substantial portions of the city. Chidinma started in his office, a domain of rich mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Manhattan's glittering skyline. Everything maintained perfect precision, books in Korean and English, documents she deliberately avoided reading, a single framed photograph of an elderly couple she presumed were his parents. She was dusting the bookcases when voices approached, male voices conversing in rapid Korean. She recognized Min-jae's resonant baritone immediately, accompanied by another man's lighter responses. They entered without acknowledging her presence. Chidinma kept her head lowered, continuing her work as soundlessly as possible, attempting to become part of the furniture. Victor Chen is making aggressive moves in Brooklyn, the second man said, transitioning to English. He believes you've grown vulnerable. Min-jae's laugh was cold and utterly humorless. Perfect. His assumptions will make the inevitable response considerably easier. Should we proceed with? The second man stopped abruptly.
We have company. Chidinma's hand froze against the bookshelf. She felt their attention pivot toward her, heavy as physical pressure. She turned deliberately, maintaining respectfully lowered eyes, and found herself directly facing Park Min-jae for the first time with any real proximity. He stood taller than she'd estimated, possessing sharp features and penetrating dark eyes that seemed to inventory every detail about her in a single sweep. His black hair was impeccably styled, and he wore a crisp white dress shirt with several buttons undone, revealing a powerfully built chest and a glimpse of elegant vertical Hangul script tattooed along his neck. Authority emanated from him like heat rising from summer concrete. My apologies, Mr. Park. I'll return later to complete this. She moved to collect her supplies, and her ribs erupted in vicious protest. The pain struck so suddenly and sharply that she couldn't fully mask the flinch, couldn't entirely suppress the sharp breath intake. She froze, anticipating dismissal or irritation. What she received instead was silence, weighted, evaluating silence. When she finally dared glance upward, Min-jae was studying her with an expression impossible to decipher. His jaw had clenched almost imperceptibly, and something dangerous had sparked in those dark eyes. You're the new housekeeper. Not a question. Yes, sir. Chidinma Okafor. She straightened despite the agony, meeting his gaze briefly before looking away again. Years of her father's lessons echoed through her mind. Never reveal weakness. Never permit them to witness you breaking. How long have you worked here?
3 weeks, sir. And you're injured? Still not phrased as a question. Somehow he'd perceived what she'd been concealing from everyone else. I'm managing perfectly, sir. Just a minor mishap. It won't impact my performance. The other man in the room, younger, sharper-featured, also Korean, exchanged a loaded glance with Min-jae. Something unspoken passed between them. Taehin, give us privacy, Min-jae said quietly. Taehin hesitated momentarily, then nodded and departed, closing the door with a soft click. Chidinma's pulse accelerated. She was alone with one of New York's most formidable underworld figures, and he'd just noticed she was hurt. Every instinct shrieked at her to flee, to vanish, to protect herself, but she desperately needed this position. Desperately. Look at me, Miss Okafor. She did, slowly, raising her eyes to his. Up close, she could see the faint scar tracing his jawline, the intensity in his gaze suggesting he missed absolutely nothing and forgot even less. Who hurt you? His voice was gentle, almost tender, but steel lurked underneath, a promise of barely restrained violence. Nobody, sir. I told you it was a mishap. Don't lie to me. He stepped closer, and she fought the impulse to retreat. I've witnessed enough injuries to recognize the difference between accidents and someone's fists. Who hurt you? The concern in his voice felt wrong, unexpected. Men like him didn't care about women like her. They didn't notice when someone flinched in Dane or wore long sleeves in July. They certainly didn't ask questions with that edge of protective fury threading through their tone. It's resolved, Mr. Park. He's no longer an issue. He, another step closer. Your boyfriend? Ex-boyfriend, and I've left him. That's why I desperately needed this position. The words escaped before she could capture them, raw and unfiltered. I needed distance, needed to support my son, needed to rebuild. Please don't terminate me. I understand I shouldn't have brought personal complications to work, but I promise it won't happen again.
Terminate you? He looked genuinely confused momentarily. Then something resembling anger flashed across his features. Not directed at her, she realized. For her. Miss Okafor, I have absolutely no intention of terminating you. However, I need complete honesty. Are you secure? Is your son secure? The question fractured something within her chest. When had anyone last asked if she was secure? When had someone cared? Yes, she whispered. We're secure now. Marcus doesn't know our location. Min-jae nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Dr. Yoon will arrive tomorrow at 9. You'll see her. Sir, I cannot afford. You can, because it's complimentary. Dr. Yoon works exclusively for me, and I care for my staff. His tone permitted no argument. If those ribs are fractured, you require proper medical attention. And if anyone comes searching for you here, you inform security immediately. Clear? Chidinma could only stare at him,
stunned into silence by this unexpected compassion from a man whose world was constructed on violence and power. "Clear, Miss Okafor?" "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." He studied her another extended moment, something shifting in his expression. "What's your son's name?" "Chukwudi. He's 9. "And who's watching him during your shifts?" "My best friend, Ngozi. She lives in our building." Min-jae nodded once, decisively. "Good. You'll depart at 4:30 today, instead of 7. Go home to your son." He moved toward his desk, effectively dismissing her, but paused. "And, Miss Okafor, you're secure here, in my home, under my protection. That carries significant weight." She believed him. God help her, she believed him. As Chidinma gathered her supplies with trembling hands and exited the office, she couldn't shake the sensation that something fundamental had just shifted. She'd arrived at this penthouse seeking invisibility, and discovered instead a man who saw everything, including the wounds she'd tried desperately to hide. Dr. Yoon arrived precisely at 9 the following morning. Professional and efficient, she examined Chidinma in one of the guest suites, gentle hands carefully probing her ribcage while asking quiet questions about pain intensity and respiratory difficulty. "2 cracked ribs," Dr. Yoon confirmed, her expression sympathetic. "Not fully broken, fortunately, but you need rest and appropriate pain management. I'm prescribing medication and wrapping your ribs. Absolutely no heavy lifting for at minimum 6 weeks." 6 weeks? Chidinma's stomach plummeted. "But I cannot—" "Your responsibilities have been adjusted," came a voice from the entrance. Both women turned to find Min-jae leaning against the doorframe, arms folded across his chest. Today he wore black slacks and another white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal powerful forearms. The delicate Hangul script on his neck caught the morning light. "Mr. Park, I wasn't aware you were there," Dr. Yoon said smoothly, closing her medical bag. "I wanted to hear the diagnosis personally." His dark eyes fixed on Chidinma. 6 weeks of modified duty. Mrs. Chen has already been informed. "Sir, I can work—" "You can heal." His tone was firm but not unkind. Modified duty means inventory management, organizing supplies, administrative tasks. Nothing requiring bending or lifting. You'll receive your complete salary. Chidinma felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She couldn't remember the last time someone had cared for her like this, protected her like this. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to repay—" "You repay me by healing properly and continuing your excellent work." He straightened from the doorway. "Dr. Yoon will examine you weekly. If you experience any worsening symptoms, inform Mrs. Chen immediately." He started to leave, then paused. "And Miss Okafor, I've increased security protocols at the building. If your ex-boyfriend appears, he won't pass the lobby." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone with Dr. Yoon, who watched the empty doorway with knowing eyes. "He's protective of his staff," the doctor said carefully, "though I've never witnessed him quite this attentive." Chidinma didn't know how to respond to that, so she remained silent. But something warm had bloomed in her chest, something dangerous, that felt suspiciously like hope. Over the following 3 weeks, Chidinma discovered that Min-jae's version of modified duty meant working almost exclusively in areas where he happened to be present. When she organized files in the office, he was there reviewing contracts. When she inventoried the wine cellar, he appeared to select bottles for dinner. When she cataloged linens in the storage room, he materialized asking Mrs. Chen questions that could have been answered anywhere else. He rarely spoke to her directly, beyond brief professional exchanges, but he was always there, a silent presence she felt like warmth on her skin. It was during her 4th week, while she was organizing books in his private library, that Chukwudi changed everything. Ngozi had experienced a family crisis, and Chidinma had no alternative but to bring her son to work. Mrs. Chen, bless her understanding heart, had immediately set Chukwudi up in the staff lounge with coloring books and snacks. But 9-year-old boys possessed curious spirits, and Chukwudi had apparently slipped away to explore. Chidinma found him in the library, staring up at Park Min-jae with wide, fearless eyes. Her heart stopped. "Chukwudi, I'm so sorry, Mr. Park." "Is this your office?" Chukwudi interrupted, undaunted. "It's enormous. My mom says you're her boss. Are you wealthy?" "Chukwudi,"
Chidinma moved forward quickly despite the twinge in her ribs, mortification flooding through her. That's not appropriate. It's fine. Minjae's voice held a trace of amusement. He crouched to Chukwadi's level, bringing himself eye to eye with the boy. Yes, this is my office, and yes, I suppose I am wealthy. What's your name? Chukwadi Okafor. I'm 9 and 2 months. My mom works for you, and she says you're a good boss because she helped her when she was hurt. Chukwadi's expression turned serious, far too serious for a child. Thank you for taking care of my mom. I tried to, but I'm not big enough yet. Something cracked in Minjae's carefully controlled expression. Chidinma saw it, a flash of pain, of recognition, of something raw and vulnerable, before he locked it down again.
You're a good son, Chukwudi, he said quietly. Your mother is fortunate to have you. I'm fortunate to have her. Chukwudi tilted his head, studying Minjae with that same fearless curiosity. You have a tattoo. What does it say? Chukwudi, that's enough questions, Chidinma interjected, finally finding her voice. Mr. Park is busy. It's a name, Minjae said, ignoring her protest. His hand moved unconsciously to touch the fungal script on his neck. Someone important to me. Like family. Like family. Chukwudi nodded solemnly, as if Minjae had revealed some profound truth. Family is important. My mom says that's why we had to leave my dad, because family means protecting each other, not hurting. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Minjae's entire body went rigid, his jaw clenching so tightly Chidinma could see the muscle jump. When he spoke, his voice was carefully, dangerously controlled. Your father hurt you? He wasn't really my dad, Chukwudi said matter-of-factly. Just mom's boyfriend. My real dad died when I was little. I don't remember him, but mom says he was a good man. Minjae's eyes found Chidinma's over Chukwudi's head, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Rage. Pure, cold, lethal rage, barely restrained. But underneath it, something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. Chukwudi, sweetheart, we need to return to the staff lounge, Chidinma said gently, moving to take her son's hand. Mr. Park has work. Does he like video games? Chukwudi looked up at Minjae hopefully. I'm really good at them. Maybe we could play sometime. Chukwudi. I don't play video games, Minjae said, and Chidinma's heart sank at the inevitable rejection. But then he continued. However, I have a chess set in my office. Do you know how to play chess? Chukwudi's face illuminated. My grandpa was teaching me before he died, but I'm not very good yet. Then perhaps I could teach you. Minjae straightened, and the dangerous edge had softened slightly. If your mother approves. Both males turned to look at Chidinma expectantly. She felt completely out of her depth, standing in a billionaire's library while he offered to teach her son chess. This wasn't how her life was supposed to unfold. Men like Park Minjae didn't befriend the children of their housekeepers. But Chukwudi was looking at her with such hope, and Minjae was watching her with an expression that suggested he understood exactly what this moment meant, that her son was desperate for positive male attention, for someone to step into the void Marcus's abuse and her father's death had left. If it's not too much trouble, Mr. Park, she heard herself say. No trouble. His eyes held hers for a moment longer, something unspoken passing between them. Tomorrow, 3:30 in the office, but only if you finish your homework first, Chukwudi. I will, I promise. Chukwudi was practically bouncing with excitement. As Chidinma led her son back to the staff lounge, her mind whirled with questions and worries. She was permitting Park Minjae, a man whose business dealings were shrouded in danger, into her son's life, into their lives. But when she glanced back, she found him still standing in the library doorway, watching them walk away. The expression on his face was complex. Longing, protectiveness, and something that looked almost like pain. He caught her looking and nodded once, a silent promise she didn't yet understand. She was starting to realize that Park Minjae was far more complicated than she'd imagined, and far more dangerous to her carefully guarded heart. The chess lessons became routine. 4 times a week, Chukwudi would sit across from Minjae in the office, his small face scrunched in concentration as he studied the board. Minjae was a patient instructor, explaining strategies in simple terms, praising Chukwudi's clever moves, and gently correcting errors. Chidinma was usually working nearby, ostensibly organizing documents or dusting shelves, but really watching this unexpected friendship develop between her son and the intimidating man who ran a criminal empire. Checkmate, Chukwudi announced triumphantly one afternoon. then immediately deflated. Wait, no, that's not checkmate, is it?
Not quite, Min-jae said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. But it was a strong attempt. You're thinking 4 moves ahead now. That's significant progress. When will I be good enough to beat you? When you stop broadcasting your intentions with your expressions. Min-jae reached across the board and gently tapped Chukwadi's forehead. Chess is about reading your opponent. Currently, you reveal every thought you have. How do I stop doing that? Practice control, learning to conceal what you're feeling. Min-jae's expression darkened slightly. Though I hope you never need that skill anywhere except on a chessboard, Chukwadi. Chukwadi was quiet for a moment, then asked with devastating simplicity, "Is that why you're so good at it? Because you had to hide your feelings a lot?" The question hung in the air. Chidinma stopped pretending to work and turned to look at Min-jae fully. She saw his hands tighten on the edge of the chessboard, saw the muscle in his jaw flex. "Yes," he finally said, his voice rough. "That's exactly why. Because of your job? Because of many things." Min-jae stood abruptly, moving to the window overlooking Manhattan. His broad shoulders were tense under the white dress shirt, the Hangul script on his neck visible as he tilted his head back. Sometimes life requires us to be strong when we feel weak, to show power when we feel vulnerable, to protect others even when we can barely protect ourselves. Chukwadi nodded seriously, as if Min-jae were discussing homework instead of the emotional armor required to survive a dangerous life. Like my mom, she's always strong, even when she's hurt, even when she's scared. Min-jae turned back, his dark eyes finding Chidinma's across the room. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Your mother is the strongest person I know, Chukwadi," he said quietly, "and the bravest, because she protected you. There's no greater strength than that." Chidinma felt tears burn behind her eyes. She turned away quickly, busying herself with unnecessary straightening, but she could feel Min-jae's attention still on her.
"Mr. Park?" Chukwudi's voice was small now, uncertain. Do you think Marcus will find us?" The temperature in the room dropped again. Chidinma spun around, her heart in her throat, to find Min-jae already moving back to the chess table. He crouched beside Chukwudi's chair, bringing himself to the boy's eye level, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle but absolutely certain. "No, Chukwudi, he won't find you. I promise you that." "But how can you be sure?" "Because I protect what's mine, and you and your mother are under my protection now. Do you understand what that means?" Chukwudi shook his head, wide-eyed. "It means you're safe. It means no one will hurt either of you, not while I'm here." Min-jae's hand rested briefly on Chukwudi's shoulder, a gesture of comfort and promise. "I give you my word." "Like a promise? Cross your heart and everything?" A ghost of a smile crossed Min-jae's face. "Exactly like that. Cross my heart." Chukwudi threw his arms around Min-jae's neck in an impulsive hug. Chidinma saw Min-jae freeze, saw the shock ripple across his features, before his arms slowly came up to return the embrace. When he met Chidinma's eyes over Chukwudi's shoulder, the raw vulnerability in his expression nearly broke her. This dangerous man, this crime boss who commanded fear and respect, looked absolutely undone by a 9-year-old's trust. When Chukwudi finally pulled back, he was grinning. "Can we finish our game now? I think I know how to beat you this time." "Show me," Min-jae said, his voice slightly rough. As they returned to the chessboard, Chidinma realized with crystal clarity that something irreversible had happened. Min-jae had stopped being just her employer. He'd become something more, a protector, a friend, and perhaps most terrifyingly, someone she was starting to care about deeply, someone she was starting to trust with the most precious thing in her world, her son. And judging by the way Min-jae's eyes kept finding hers across the room, soft and possessive and full of promises, he knew it too. It happened on a Wednesday evening.
Chidinma was gathering her belongings from the staff lounge, preparing to head home, when Taehyun appeared in the doorway with an expression that made her blood run cold. "Miss Okafor, Mr. Park needs to see you in his office, immediately." The walk through the penthouse felt like a death march. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had she done something wrong? Was she being fired? Had something happened to Chukwudi? Min-jae was standing at his desk when she entered, his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension. The skyline beyond the windows was painted in sunset colors, but the beauty felt ominous somehow. "Close the door," he said without turning. She did,
her hands trembling slightly. When he finally faced her, his expression was carefully blank, but fury radiated from him like heat waves. He held up his phone, screen facing her. "Do you know who this man is?" The security camera footage showed a man arguing with the lobby guards downstairs. Marcus. Her ex-boyfriend looked rough, unshaven, wild-eyed, aggressive. She could see him shouting, gesturing violently, clearly trying to force his way past security. "That's Marcus," she whispered, her stomach twisting with ice-cold fear. "He's been here for the past 40 minutes demanding to see you, claiming you stole from him, that you're keeping his son from him, that you belong to him." Min-jae's voice was deadly calm, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the phone. "He threatened my security staff. He attempted to force his way into my building." "I'm so sorry," Chidinma started, panic rising in her chest. "I never thought he'd find me here. I'll leave right now. I'll resign." "You'll do no such thing." Min-jae moved toward her with predatory grace, closing the distance between them in 3 strides. "Sit down, Chidinma." It was the first time he'd used her first name. The sound of it in his deep voice made something flutter in her chest despite her fear. She sank into the chair facing his desk, her legs suddenly unreliable. Min-jae leaned against the desk in front of her, arms crossed, studying her with those intense dark eyes. "Tell me everything, from the beginning. I need to understand what I'm dealing with." "What you're dealing with?" she echoed. "This is my problem, not yours." The moment he showed up at my building, threatening my staff and trying to get to someone under my protection, it became my problem. His jaw clenched. "Now tell me, how long were you with him?" The concern in his voice, the barely restrained protectiveness, broke something loose inside her. The whole story came pouring out. Meeting Marcus 3 years after her husband's death. How charming he'd been initially. How gradually the charm had turned to control, then anger, then violence. How she'd hidden it from everyone, making excuses, believing his apologies. How the final incident 4 weeks ago had been the wake-up call she'd needed. Min-jae's expression had grown progressively darker throughout her story. Now he looked murderous. And Chukwudi. His voice was rough. Did he hurt Chukwudi? He never touched Chukwudi directly, but he'd hurt me in front of him. And that, her voice broke, that was enough. My son shouldn't have to witness his mother treated like that. Shouldn't have to learn that love looks like fear. No child should. Min-jae stood abruptly, pacing to the window. When he spoke again, his voice was strained with barely controlled rage. "I want to end him for what he did to you, for what he made Chukwudi witness. I want to make sure he can never hurt anyone again." The confession should have terrified her. Instead, something warm and fierce bloomed in her chest. When was the last time someone had been angry on her behalf? When was the last time someone had wanted to protect her with such intensity? "But I won't," Min-jae continued, turning back to face her. "Because that's not what you need from me right now. What you need is safety, security, the assurance that he can't touch you or Chukwudi ever again." "How can you guarantee that?" His smile was cold and dangerous. "Because I'm very good at making problems disappear, Chidinma, and Marcus is about to become a problem that solves itself." "I don't understand." "You don't need to. All you need to know is that by tomorrow, Marcus will understand very clearly that you are off limits, that if he comes near you or Chukwudi again, the consequences will be severe. He'll leave the city and he won't return. You can't." She stopped, realizing that he absolutely could. This was his world, his power. "What are you going to do to him?" "Nothing permanent, nothing that will come back to you." Min-jae moved closer, crouching in front of her chair the way he'd done with Chukwudi, bringing them eye to eye. "But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Chidinma searched his face, seeing the determination there, the protectiveness, and underneath it all, something that looked almost like tenderness. This man barely knew her, had no reason to care about her problems, yet here he was, offering to handle a situation that could be dangerous for him. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why would you do this for me?" Something shifted in his expression, vulnerability flashing across his features before he could lock it down.
"Because you're under my protection. Because Chukwudi looks at me like I'm someone worth looking up to, and I won't let him down by failing to keep his mother safe." He paused, his voice dropping lower. And because, when I look at you, I see strength and courage that most of my so-called powerful associates don't possess, you deserve better than to live in fear. His hand moved as if to touch her face, then dropped back to his side. The almost touch felt more intimate than if he'd actually made contact. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. The relief in his eyes was palpable. He stood, offering his hand to help her up. When she took it, his fingers closed around hers with careful strength, warm and solid. Taeyan will drive you and Chukwudi home tonight. There will be security outside your building. You're not to worry about this anymore. Understood? Yes. Good. He still hadn't released her hand. And Chidinma, if you ever feel unsafe, if anything seems wrong, you call me, day or night, promise me. He pulled a card from his pocket with his free hand, pressing it into her palm. His private number, she realized. Not the office line, but his personal cell. I promise. They stood there for a moment longer than necessary, hands still clasped, something electric passing between them. Then Chukwudi's voice echoed from down the hallway, calling for his mother, and the spell broke. Minye released her hand slowly, his fingers trailing across her palm. Go to your son. Taeyan will handle everything else. As Chidinma left his office, her hand still tingling from his touch, she felt the fear that had been her constant companion for weeks finally begin to ease. Minye had promised to keep them safe, and somehow she knew he would keep that promise, no matter what it cost him. The next morning, Chidinma arrived at work to find the penthouse buzzing with an undercurrent of tension. Staff members moved through their duties with quick efficiency, casting nervous glances toward Minye's private wing.
Mrs. Chen pulled her aside in the hallway. Mr. Park was out late last night, came back around 2:30. Taehyun says it's handled, whatever it is. The head housekeeper's knowing eyes studied Chidinma's face. This wouldn't have anything to do with the man who tried to force his way in yesterday, would it? I don't know what you mean, Chidinma said carefully. Mrs. Chen didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Mr. Park wants to see you in his office at 9. Don't be late. When Chidinma entered the office at the appointed time, she found Min-jae standing at his window, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. His white dress shirt was wrinkled, the sleeves rolled up, and there was darkness under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept. But he turned to her with a small smile, and there was satisfaction in his expression. It's done, he said simply. What's done? Marcus signed a legal document this morning, relinquishing any claim to you or Chukwudi. He also signed a restraining order that will be enforced by both legal authorities and other interested parties. He's been offered a construction position in Portland that pays well enough to make relocating attractive. He'll be gone by the end of the week. Chidinma's knees went weak. How had you... It's better if you don't know the details, but I can tell you that he was very motivated to accept my offer. Sometimes people need to be reminded that their actions have consequences. Min-jae's expression hardened for a moment, then softened as he looked at her. You're safe now, Chidinma, truly safe. He won't bother you again. She should have been disturbed by the implications of life he'd done, should have asked more questions about how he'd convinced Marcus to agree to all of this overnight. But all she felt was overwhelming relief and gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, tears streaming down her face before she could stop them. Thank you so much. Don't cry. He crossed the room in 2 strides, his hands coming up to gently cup her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. You're safe. That's all that matters. She looked up at him through her tears, seeing the tenderness in his eyes, the careful way he held her as if she were something precious. This dangerous man, this crime lord, was treating her with more gentleness than anyone had in years. Why are you being so good to me? The question escaped before she could stop it. His thumb traced along her cheekbone, his touch feather-light. Because you deserve good things, Chidinma. Because Chukwudi deserves to see his mother treated with respect and care. Because... He stopped, something vulnerable flickering across his features. Because? She prompted softly. Because I'm starting to care about you both far more than I should. The confession seemed pulled from somewhere deep inside him, and that's dangerous for all of us. Why dangerous? Because people in my world don't get to keep the things they care about. They get taken away, used as leverage, hurt as punishment. His hands were still cradling her face, his gaze intense and pained. I should push you away, should keep my distance, but I can't seem to do it.
Chidinma's heart was racing. She reached up, covering one of his hands with her own. Then don't. I've spent the last 3 years being afraid. Afraid of Marcus, afraid of being alone, afraid of not being enough to protect my son. But with you, I'm not afraid. She held his gaze, letting him see the truth in her eyes. Maybe that's dangerous. Maybe I'm being foolish. But I trust you, Minjae. And I think Chikwedi and I are safer with you than we've ever been. Something broke in his carefully controlled expression. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers, his eyes closing as if in pain or relief or both. You're going to ruin me, he murmured. You and that brave boy of yours. Is that a bad thing?
I don't know yet. He opened his eyes, and the intensity in his gaze stole her breath. But I don't think I care anymore. They stood like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, sharing breath, balanced on the edge of something neither of them could name, but both of them felt pulling them together. Then Chikwudi's excited voice echoed from somewhere in the penthouse. Mom, where are you? Mr. Park said we could have our chess lesson early today. They broke apart, both smiling despite the charged atmosphere. He asked me this morning if we could play before his school day, Minjae explained, stepping back but keeping one hand on her waist, as if reluctant to fully break contact. I hope that's all right. More than all right. Chidinma's smile was genuine, warm. He talks about you constantly. You're his hero. I'm no hero, Chidinma. Maybe not, but you're his, and mine. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning, full of promise. Minjae's hand tightened on her waist briefly before releasing her. I should go find him before he tears apart the library looking for the chess set, he said, his voice slightly rough. Minjae? She caught his arm as he turned to leave. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I was trying to be invisible. For caring when you didn't have to. For keeping us safe. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up at her face, and the smile he gave her was genuine and unguarded, transforming his usually severe features into something almost boyish. You were never invisible to me, Chidinma. Not from the moment I saw you flinch in pain and try to hide it. You've been impossible to ignore ever since. With that, he left to find Chikwudi, leaving Chidinma standing in his office with her heart racing and her mind reeling with the implications of everything that had just been said. She was falling for him, for this complicated, dangerous, protective man who played chess with her son and moved heaven and earth to keep them safe. And God help her, she thought he might be falling for her too. 4 weeks passed in a strange, beautiful bubble. Marcus had indeed left for Portland without incident, and the constant fear that had been Chidinma's companion for months finally began to fade. She threw herself into her work, her ribs healing properly thanks to Dr. Yoon's care and Minjae's insistence on modified duty. Chikwudi flourished under Minjae's attention. The chess lessons had expanded to include discussions of history, strategy, even some basic Korean phrases that Chikwudi delighted in trying to pronounce. Minjae was patient and kind, showing a side of himself that Chidinma suspected few people ever got to see. And between Chidinma and Minjae, something was growing. Stolen glances across rooms, brief touches that lingered longer than necessary, conversations that started professional and ended personal. He'd begun calling her by her first name regularly, and she no longer called him Mr. Park when they were alone. It felt like the beginning of something wonderful, which is why she should have known it couldn't last. The first warning came on a Thursday morning. Mrs. Chen pulled Chidinma aside with worry etched in her features. Mr. Park received a message last night from Victor Chen. The head housekeeper's voice was barely a whisper. There's going to be trouble. The dangerous kind. The kind that happens when powerful men have disagreements. You should take Chikwudi home early. But before Chidinma could gather her things, Taehyun appeared, his usually composed face tense with urgency. Miss Okafor, Mr. Park needs you in his office now, and bring Chikwudi. Her blood turned to ice. What's wrong? Just come quickly. She found Chikwudi in the staff lounge and practically dragged him through the penthouse, her heart pounding with dread. When they entered Minjae's office, she found him standing with 3 other men, all Korean, all dressed in dark suits, all radiating danger. But Minjae's attention went immediately to Chikwudi, and his expression softened despite the tension in the room. Chikwudi, I need you to go with Taehyun for a little while. He's going to take you somewhere very safe. Can you do that for me?
But our chess lesson.
We'll play later, I promise. Min-jae crouched down, bringing himself eye level with the boy. Right now, I need you to be very brave and do exactly what Taeyeon tells you. Can you do that? Chukwu-ri looked between Min-jae and his mother, fear creeping into his young face.
Mom, what's happening?
Everything's fine, darling. Chidimma forced her voice to stay calm, even as panic screamed through her veins. Go with Taeyeon. I'll be right behind you. You're lying. Chukwu-ri's voice trembled. You only call me darling when you're scared. Min-jae's hands settled on Chukwu-ri's shoulders. Your mother and I need to have a grown-up conversation. When we're done, we'll come get you. But right now, the most important thing you can do is trust Taeyeon to keep you safe. He's my most trusted friend, and he'll protect you with his life. Understand? Chukwu-ri nodded slowly, then surprised everyone by throwing his arms around Min-jae's neck one more time. Be careful, the boy whispered. Please. Chidinma saw Min-jae's eyes close briefly, saw his arms tightened around Chukwu-ri. I will. Now go. Taeyeon led Chukwu-ri from the room, and the moment the door closed, Min-jae's entire demeanor changed. The gentle teacher disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating crime lord. Victor Chen knows about you, he said without preamble, his eyes meeting Chidinma's. And about Chukwu-ri. The room tilted. How? Someone in my organization has been feeding him information. I don't know who yet, but Chen now knows that you and Chukwu-ri matter to me, which makes you both targets. One of the other men spoke up in rapid Korean. Min-jae responded in kind, his tone clipped and authoritative. The conversation went back and forth, heated and tense, until Min-jae held up a hand for silence. I'm moving you and Chukwu-ri to a secure location, he told Chidinma. Today, you'll have around-the-clock protection until I can neutralize this threat. For how long?
However long it takes. His jaw clenched. Chen is using you as leverage. He wants me to back down from certain business territories. He thinks threatening someone I care about will make me weak. Then maybe you should just... No. The word was final. Absolute. I don't back down. And I sure as hell don't let people threaten what's mine. I'm not yours, aren't you? He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face. Tell me you don't feel this thing between us. Tell me you haven't been thinking about it every time we're in the same room. Tell me Chukwu-ri doesn't light up like fireworks every time I walk in. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. His forehead pressed against hers, his voice dropping to something rough and desperate. You and Chukwu-ri have become the most important things in my world, and Chen knows it. So now I have to make a choice. Let you go to keep you safe, or hold on tight and fight for what I want. What do you want? You. Both of you. In my life, in my home, in my future. I want chess lessons and home-cooked meals, and someone who sees past the monster I am to the man I'm trying to be for you. His hands were trembling against her face. But wanting you puts you in danger, and I don't know if I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. Chidinma felt tears slip down her cheeks. What if I want to be kept? His breath hitched. Chidinma, I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid. You make me feel safe. You make Chukwu-ri happy. And yes, there's danger, but there's danger everywhere. She covered his hands with hers. At least with you, I know someone is fighting to protect us. At least with you, I don't have to do it alone anymore. You could die. Chukwu-ri could die because of me. Or we could live, really live, not just survive, with you. She pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. I'm choosing to stay, Min-jae. I'm choosing you. Let me. The conflict in his expression was painful to witness. Chidinma could see him warring with himself, weighing her safety against his desire to keep them close. Finally, he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. If anything happens to you or Chukwu-ri because of me, I'll never forgive myself. Then don't let anything happen. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her cheek. Fight for us, win, and then come home to us. I will. The promise was fierce, unbreakable. I swear to you, I'll end this threat and keep you safe, both of you. One of the other men cleared his throat,
speaking urgently in Korean. Min-jae responded without releasing Chidinma, his arms still locked around her. "They're ready to move you," he said quietly. "There's a safe house in Connecticut. High security, armed guards, everything you need. Chukwoody can continue his schoolwork remotely for a few days." "What about you?" "I'll be handling Victor Chen." His voice hardened. "By the end of the week, he won't be a problem anymore." "Min-jae, don't ask me not to do this. Don't ask me to show mercy to someone who threatened you and Chukwoody." He pulled back to look at her, and the cold fury in his eyes was terrifying. "This is who I am, Chidinma. This is the world I live in. If you're choosing me, you need to understand that." She did understand. And God help her, she didn't care. This man had shown her and her son more care and protection than anyone else in years. If that came with darkness, with danger, with difficult truths about how he handled threats, she could live with that. "Just come back to us," she said. "That's all I'm asking. End this threat and come back."
"I will." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her nose, everything but her lips, as if kissing her mouth would seal something he wasn't ready to seal yet. "I promise you I will." The next hour was a whirlwind of packing, security briefings, and saying goodbye to Mrs. Chen. Chukwoody was confused and scared, but tried to be brave, holding tight to his mother's hand as they were ushered into an armored SUV. As they pulled away from the penthouse, Chidinma looked back to see Min-jae standing at the window of his office, watching them leave. Even from this distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the determination in his stance. He was going to war for them. And somehow she knew he would win. He had to. Because the alternative, losing him now, after everything, was unthinkable. The safe house was beautiful, a sprawling estate with manicured lawns and enough security to make Fort Knox jealous. But to Chidinma, it felt like a gilded cage. 5 days passed with no word from Min-jae. Tae-hyun assured her everything was proceeding according to plan, but the lack of communication was eating her alive. Chukwoody sensed her worry, becoming clingy and quiet. At night, he'd crawl into her bed, seeking comfort they both needed. On the 6th morning, Tae-hyun's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it, and when he returned, his expression was grim. "There's been a development," he said carefully. "Victor Chen made a move last night. There was a confrontation." Chidinma's heart stopped. "Is Min-jae?" "He's alive. He's fine." Tae-hyun hesitated. "Chen is dead. Mr. Park handled it personally." The room swam. Chidinma sat down heavily on the couch, processing this information. Min-jae had killed for them, had ended a life to keep them safe. "He wants to see you," Tae-hyun continued. "He's at the penthouse. I can take you down now if you're willing." "Mom?" Chukwoody appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Is Mr. Park okay?" "He's fine, sweetheart. He wants to see us. Can we go, please?"
Chidinma looked at her son's hopeful face, then back to Tae-hyun's patient expression. Whatever had happened, whatever Min-jae had done, she needed to see him, to make sure he was really okay, to understand what this meant for all of them. "Yes," she said. "Let's go." The penthouse was eerily quiet when they arrived. Tae-hyun led them straight to Min-jae's private quarters, a section of the residence Chidinma had never entered before. He was standing on the balcony, his back to them, still wearing the clothes from what? A battle? A murder? The white dress shirt was stained with something dark that might have been blood, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. "Wait here," Chidinma told Chukwoody softly. "Let me talk to him first." She stepped out onto the balcony, and Min-jae turned at the sound. His face was a mask of exhaustion and something darker. Guilt, perhaps? Or regret? "You came," he said hoarsely. "Of course I came." She moved closer, searching his face for injuries. There was a bruise forming along his jaw, a cut on his lip, but otherwise he seemed physically unharmed. Tae-hyun said, "I killed him." The words were flat, emotionless. "Victor Chen. I shot him myself. He's gone, and the threat is over. and my hands are covered in blood." He held them up as if she could see the stains. "This is who I am, Chidinma. This is what I do. And I did it for you, for Chukwudi. But that doesn't make it noble or heroic. It makes it murder." Chidinma reached out slowly, taking his hands in hers. They were warm and solid and shaking slightly. "You did it to protect us. Does that make it better? I don't know. But I know you're not a monster. I know you've shown more care and kindness to my son and me than most so-called good people ever have." She squeezed his hands. "I know that Chukwudi is inside right now, worried about you, waiting to make sure you're okay. And I know that She stopped, the words catching in her throat.
"You what?" His voice was raw, desperate. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you for protecting us, for seeing us, for giving Chukwudi a male role model who treats him with respect and teaches him to be strong but gentle, for making me feel safe for the first time in years." Tears streamed down her face. "I love you, and I don't care what you had to do to keep us safe. I'm just grateful you came back to us." Min-jae made a broken sound and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you. Don't deserve either of you. Maybe not. But you have us anyway." She pulled back to cup his face in her hands. "You have us, Min-jae. If you want us, I want you." The confession was fierce and immediate. "God, I want you both so much it terrifies me. I want Chukwudi's chess lessons, and your smile in the morning, and the chance to be something more than what I've always been. I want—" "Mr. Park?" Chukwudi's small voice interrupted from the doorway. "Are you okay?" Min-jae turned, and Chidinma saw his expression transform. The guilt and darkness melted away, replaced by something warm and tender, as Chukwudi ran across the balcony and threw his arms around Min-jae's waist. "I was so worried," Chukwudi said, his voice muffled against Min-jae's shirt. "Taehin said there was trouble. I thought maybe you got hurt." "I'm fine, Chukwudi. I promised I'd come back, didn't I?" Min-jae crouched down, bringing himself eye level with the boy. "And I always keep my promises to you. Are we safe now? Can we go home?" "You're safe. The bad man won't bother you or your mom anymore." Min-jae glanced up at Chidinma, something vulnerable in his expression. "And about going home, I was hoping you might consider staying here with me. Both of you." Chukwudi's eyes went wide. "Like living here? In the big house?"
"Yes, if your mom agrees. You'd have your own room, of course, and we could play chess every day, and I could teach you more Korean, and—" He trailed off, looking uncertain for the first time since Chidinma had met him, "and I could try to be the kind of man you both deserve." "You already are," Chidinma said softly. Chukwudi looked between them, his young face serious. "Would you be like my new dad?" The question hung in the air. Min-jae's expression cracked with emotion, and Chidinma saw his eyes glisten with unshed tears. "I would never try to replace your father," Min-jae said carefully. "He was your mom's husband, and she loved him. But I would be honored to be someone you could count on, someone who protects you and teaches you and cares about you, if that's okay with you." Chukwudi threw his arms around Min-jae's neck again. "That's very okay with me." Over her son's shoulder, Min-jae's eyes found Chidinma's. The question in them was clear. She answered by crossing the balcony and wrapping her arms around both of them, creating a circle of 3 people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it. Yes to staying. Yes to building something new. Yes to you." Min-jae's arm came around her waist, holding her and Chukwudi both, and for the first time since she'd known him, Min-jae saw him smile. Really smile, unguarded and genuine and full of hope. "I love you," he said quietly, "both of you, and I swear I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of this gift you're giving me." "You already are," Chidinma repeated, and this time she meant it with every fiber of her being. Later, after Chukwudi had fallen asleep on the couch inside,
Exhausted from excitement and relief, Min-jae and Chidinma stood together on the balcony, watching the sunset over Manhattan. "I never thought I'd have this," Min-jae said quietly. "A family, someone to come home to, something worth fighting for beyond power and territory."
"And now you do." Chidinma leaned into his side, feeling his arm wrap securely around her waist. "Now I do." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I know this won't be easy. My world is dangerous. There will be threats, complications, people who try to use you against me. Then we'll face them together." She turned in his arms to look up at him. "You're not alone anymore, Park Min-jae, and neither am I. We're a team now. A family." "A family," he repeated, testing the word. Then he smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "I like the sound of that." He leaned down, and finally, his lips met hers in a kiss that was tender and fierce and full of promise. A kiss that tasted like new beginnings and second chances and the possibility of happiness neither of them had expected to find. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Chidinma rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For noticing me. For seeing my pain when I was trying to hide it. For caring when you didn't have to. For protecting us. For giving Chukwudi a role model and giving me hope." His arms tightened around her. "You gave me more than I gave you, Chidinma. You gave me a reason to be better, a reason to want more than just power and fear. You gave me everything." They stood there as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to build something bright together. Inside, Chukwudi stirred in his sleep, safe and protected in a home that was truly becoming theirs. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Chidinma felt completely, perfectly at peace.
8 months later, the penthouse had transformed from a cold, imposing space into a real home. Chukwudi's artwork covered the refrigerator, his chess trophies lined the shelves in the office. Chidinma's touches were everywhere. Fresh flowers on the tables, photos of the three of them on the walls, warmth and life in rooms that had once been sterile showcases. Chidinma had stopped working as a housekeeper after the first month. Min-jae had insisted, and for once, she'd let herself be taken care of. She'd enrolled in online business courses, finally pursuing the degree she'd abandoned after her first husband's death. Chukwudi was thriving in his new private school, making friends and excelling in his classes. And Min-jae was different. Still powerful, still commanding respect in his world, but gentler at home, more open, more willing to show vulnerability with the two people who'd proven they wouldn't use it against him. "Checkmate," Chukwudi announced triumphantly from the chessboard in the office. Min-jae studied the board, then looked up at the boy with genuine pride. "So it is. Well played, Chukwudi. You've been practicing." "You taught me well," Chukwudi beamed. "Does this mean I finally beat you for real?" "It does. I'm very proud of you. Can I call you Dad yet?" The question stopped Min-jae mid-reach for a chess piece. Chidinma, who'd been reading on the couch nearby, looked up with wide eyes. It was a conversation they'd been dancing around for months. Chukwudi shook in calling Min-jae by his first name, but the longing for something more had been obvious in every interaction. "Chukwudi," Chidinma stammered gently, "we talked about this." I know he's not my real dad. I know my real dad died, and he was a good man, and Mom loved him." Chukwudi's voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were hopeful as he looked at Min-jae. "But you're here now, and you take care of us, and you teach me stuff, and you love Mom. I can tell even though you're weird about saying it in front of me. And I think you love me too. So can't you be my dad? Like my dad now?" Min-jae's composure finally cracked. Chidinma saw tears gather in his eyes as he pulled Chukwudi into a fierce hug. "I would be honored," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "So honored, Chukwudi. If your mom agrees." "Mom?" Chukwudi looked at her hopefully. Chidinma's own tears were flowing freely now. "Of course I agree. Of course." "Then yes," Min-jae said, pulling back to look at Chukwudi. "Yes, you can call me Dad. And I promise I'll do everything I can to be worthy of that title." Chukwudi launched himself at Min-jae again, this time saying the word they'd all been waiting for. "Thanks, Dad."
Later that night, after Chikwudi was asleep in his room, Chidinma and Minjae stood together in the master bedroom that had become theirs. "Are you sure about this?" Minjae asked, pulling her into his arms. "Letting him call me that? It's a big step." "I'm sure. He loves you and you love him." She reached up to touch the Hangul script tattoo on his neck. She'd learned it was his younger brother's name, someone he'd lost to gang violence years ago. "You've been his father in all the ways that matter for months now. It's time to make it official." "And you?" His hand settled on her waist. "Are you happy, Chidinma? Truly happy?" She smiled up at him, this dangerous, powerful man who played chess with her son, and looked at her like she hung the moon. "Happier than I ever thought I'd be. You gave us everything, Minjae. Safety, home, love, a family." "You gave me those things," he corrected. "I was just existing before you, surviving. But you and Chikwudi, you made me want to live, to be better, to have something worth protecting beyond just power and territory." He kissed her then, deep and tender and full of the love he'd finally learned to express. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I never expected this," Chidinma admitted. "When I took that position as your housekeeper, I was just trying to survive, to keep Chikwudi safe and fed and in school. I never imagined I'd find this." "Neither did I, but I'm glad you walked into my life, Chidinma Okafor. I'm glad I noticed when you flinched in pain. I'm glad I was selfish enough to want to keep you." His forehead rested against hers. "I'm glad I get to keep you." "Forever," she promised. "Forever," he agreed. Through the walls, they could hear Chikwudi's soft breathing, safe and content in his room. Beyond the windows, Manhattan glittered like a promise. And in this room, in this moment, two people who'd each thought they were beyond saving had found salvation in each other. The crime boss and the housekeeper. The powerful and the vulnerable. The dangerous and the brave. Together, they'd built something beautiful from the ashes of their separate pains. A family, a home, a love that defied every odd and every expectation. And as Minya pulled Chidinma closer, whispering promises against her skin, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. They both were. Did you love Chidinma and Minya's story? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Timeless K-Love, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another heartwarming Afro-Korean romance. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite moment from their journey and what kind of story you'd like to see next. See you in the next one.